Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. We're going to get you all set up for the Wednesday race of the day over at Tampa Bay Downs. And remember, every race of the day, you can get free pass performances at DRF.com right there on the front homepage. David, let's take a look at the field for Wednesday for race number 8. 6 furlongs on the dirt. We have an optional $100,000 claiming event. And Launch looks like the one they'll all have to beat in here. This is a stakes winner who has faced really good company. Most recently was behind horses named Mystic Lake and Socially Selective. Mystic Lake, very nice horse, multiple graded stakes winner. Socially Selective is a 3-time winner, 3 for 6 with 3 seconds, a nice filly for Mott. Just those two are a lot tougher than this group in general, and she's getting some class relief here.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that Launch is the class of this field on paper. As you mentioned, stakes winner from earlier last year, beat a pretty good horse that day in our Harper Rose, who was a very heavy favorite in that any limit. Something went wrong following the poor effort in the Miss Preakness. But as you said, good effort back off the layoff against tougher company. This is actually a slight drop in class for her.
Let's see what the Timeform US pace projector thinks about how this race will set up. They have Launch up front. Not surprising there. But I do think if you're trying to beat her, or if she loses this race, it is probably because she faces some other company up front. To the outside, can't resist it, has shown speed in most of her 5 starts. We also have She's My Warrior to the inside of Launch, who has the ability to show some speed. Down on the inside, Ruthless Rua is not slow. So in a small field like this, too, a lot of times you can see some of the jockeys putting pressure on each other. They don't want to be strung out a little bit. So I think if she gets beat in here, it's probably because she goes a little too fast early.
Yeah, there is a little more pace in this field than it might appear at first glance, especially when you start to dig into the PPs of a horse like the number 4, She's My Warrior, who I think the pace projection is skewed a little bit towards her being slower than she actually is because she's coming out of a couple of 2-turn races on the turf. If you just isolate her dirt sprints, she's showing a lot of early speed, so I wouldn't be surprised if she's mixing it up on the front end. And the number 5 Launch, while she's got plenty of early speed, she has been successful from a stalking position, so I wouldn't be too concerned if they go quickly up front.
Let's meet the field for race 8 at Tampa Bay Downs on Wednesday. The number 1, Ruthless Rua, kicks things off from the inside. She was in really nice form heading into that last race at Gulfstream Park. She'd won 3 in a row. And then in the most recent race, she did have a little bit of trouble. It was a small field. She was in the 2 path. She was just behind the leaders, and she kept kind of trying to get through. She never really got a clear seam, David. She was kind of shifting all over the place, a little bit unlucky there. She'll have to get faster based on speed figures to probably win this race and to compete with some of the best in here. But she did have legitimate trouble there, and she's in pretty nice form right now.
Yeah, she was doing great off the claim for these connections. Won 3 races in a row, steadily moving up in class. And you mentioned the last race. I mean, she did finish last in a 4-horse field, but when you watch the replay, she was right there with those horses, really lost nothing in defeat. And as you mentioned, had to go down to the inside, was in a little bit tight, and just kept battling onto the wire. I mean, for a horse who crossed the wire last, it was actually a pretty encouraging effort against horses like Autumn Evening and Dazzling Blue, who have some stakes credentials from the past. So she's not overmatched against this field. It's just a matter of whether she can up that top speed figure a little bit because I think she needs to improve slightly to beat Launch.
Sometimes the rail can be a little tricky in spots like this also, but a positive for her, she won races at Del Mar, Gulfstream, and Churchill, 3 different tracks, and then headed over to Gulfstream Park and ran well there. So certainly isn't a horse for course, and she can fire just about everywhere. We'll see what kind of trip she works out from the inside. Let's move to the number 2, Pacific Rose, kind of an all or nothing type, David. Was a tough read for me because you see in the races for Jorge Delgado has shown some improvement, but overall just 3 for 11. 2 of those wins, though, have come for the new barn. You can probably eliminate the Gallant Bloom in a little bit tough that day. What do you think about Pacific Rose in this spot?
She's got that 181 buyer for the victory two back where she somehow got to the front end. She's really not a front running type naturally. There was just nobody else that was that quick in the race, and she was able to duel for the lead, put away a rival Fancy Azteca, who's really more of a mid level claiming type. And then she was just overmatched against much tougher company last time. Looks a cut below these on class and speed figures. Maybe she'll pick up some pieces at the end if they go quickly up front.
So for the number 3, Broken Hearts Bay, major positive, only horse in the field with a win at Tampa. But when you go through the buyer speed figures, one of the lower buyer tops in the field. In fact, the only horse who has a lower buyer top is the horse to the outside who missed basically the entire last season. And we only got some of those really early speed figures. So this one is one that has that local advantage, and we always like seeing a win over the course that you're running on, but will need to improve to probably get the better of 3 or 4 of the rivals in here.
Yeah, it feels like this replay that we're taking a look at was probably the time that you wanted to have her when she paid $18 to win. Looking competitive with this field, but just having run competitive speed figures at Prairie Meadows and Hawthorne. And she showed that she can translate that form to Tampa last time. It's just a matter of whether or not that 74 buyer that she got for winning that first level allowance race, or second level, I should say, is going to stack up against a field like this where so many of you, as you said, have already run faster numbers. I feel like we might have already seen her ceiling.
She's My Warrior is next one. She's a Minnesota bred stakes winner, but she's done most of her best work at Canterbury. I think all 6 wins and most of the races at Tampa. She seems like she's been in a little bit tough, but she set the pace going a mile on the turf last out before fading. And as you were pointing out, she is pretty quick. So she could have a real say in the way this race shapes up and the outcome of this race, even if she doesn't win.
Yeah, she's coming out of those two turn races on the turf, and you just naturally are going to go a little bit slower on the front end, which is why she was shown a bit further back on the pace projector, kind of averaging her recent pace figures. But when you take a look at the race three back, where she wired that field at her home track, Canterbury, what 21-3 to the opening quarter, was really just on go every step of the way, and was able to beat that field at a big price. And just as you were saying, though, all 6 victories at Canterbury hasn't really proven that she can take that form elsewhere and run her very best race. So this just seems like it's a tough spot for her.
Next one up looks like the horse they'll all have to beat in here, Launch. There's also a good daily racing form article from David Grenning that previews this race, talks a little bit about the decision from the connections. They were contemplating David entering in Saturday's grade 2 inside information, but they were a little bit worried about the distance there, thinking this is more of a horse that like 6 versus 7 furlongs and just wanting to be kind of like a little more logical, soft spots along the way and maybe build her up throughout the year. So she's getting some class relief. She had the lead last time out, still at the top of the lane. She had the lead. She was run down by 2 nice horses in there who would be odds on against this field if they were in this spot. So yeah, she looks like the one they'll all have to beat in here. She's just not going to necessarily be a great bet or offering us any value in this race.
Yeah, we talked about her merits in the Open. She's got that good class from her 3-year-old season. And as you were saying just now, ran really well off the layoff last time. Just seemed like she got tired at the end of that race. I mean, she was facing some really nice rivals in Mystic Lake and Socially Selective, and was kind of hanging on her left lead until the final 16th. It just kind of looked like she was really, the tank was on empty at the end of that race. So she should have gotten a lot out of that. Now stepping back in class a little bit. She just fits really well in the spot. If they go quickly up front, she can stalk. She's a deserving favorite.
Yep. Second start off the 7-month break. She'll be set for a good one. Then to the outside, we have a real wild card in here. Can't Resist It. This is a horse who won back-to-back races at Prairie Meadows, then was stakes placed at Delta before taking a shot against Stakes Company at Fairgrounds at the end of 2023. And you could probably just put a line through that because that race was followed by a more than a year layoff now. She's fast. She's a multiple stakes winner. She just hasn't raced in over a year, but this barn is actually pretty capable coming off of a long layoff. I think I saw 11 for 65, 17% with the $1.59 ROI for the last 5 years. It's not a bad number for Can't Resist It. And for this barn drawn to the outside, what do you think about her in this spot?
Yeah, as you said, she's a real wild card in this race. She ran a pair of 66 buyers in the summer of her 2-year-old season. So you would think just with routine improvement, she'd be able to run 15, 20 points faster than that now that she is a 4-year-old. She's missed all that time, though. So it's a big question of whether or not she's ready to deliver that performance off the layoff. And you might look at her last couple of efforts as a 2-year-old and say, well, her form kind of tailed off towards the end of that season. I'll say something, though, about her most recent start at Fairgrounds, which was all the way back in December of 2023. Even though I say recent, an extremely fast pace that day. They went the opening quarter in 21 flat. And while the buyer doesn't look that fast, if you look at the chart and formulator and check out the horses that were within range of that 21 opening quarter, Helena's Forte, the runner-up, came back to win her next start, improving her buyer 18 points. The 6th place finisher, who was setting that 21 quarter dueling with Can't Resist It, came back in her next start, improved her buyer by 34 points. So that's a race where horses who were involved in that pace really came back to improve. She's been off for a long time, has some quick workout showing for this, is drawn well outside with the speed. I'm pretty intrigued to see how she does here.
When we move to selections, you're going to get a little more creative in this race than I am. And I think if you're going to take a swing here, you can sort of eliminate others who might give you value in this race. And you've gotten to one of the horses who probably gives you the most value in here.
Yeah, obviously, Launch is a way more likely winner than Can't Resist It. I just found enough things in Can't Resist This form to suggest that maybe she's even a little better than she looks on paper. And sometimes horses like this that, are off a long layoff since they were younger runners get a little undervalued by the betters, hoping that she does go off at a price for some lower profile connections.
Well, if you're trying to beat a launch like David, or maybe couldn't get quite as creative like me, we wish you the best of luck on Wednesday over at Tampa.